The whole world stopped to watch. The white smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel and, in just a few moments, the new pope's name echoed throughout St. Peter's Square, reaching millions of homes around the globe. Billions of eyes, whether Catholic or not, turned toward Rome at that moment. Headlines took over the news, and social media exploded with comments and analysis. But while everyone is busy debating political implications, theological stances, and potential changes in the church, something much deeper is happening behind the scenes of our collective consciousness. It's something very few are noticing, but it could completely change your life, especially if you're over 60. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. If this content already sparks your curiosity, don't miss out on liking this video right now and turning on notifications. What I'm about to share might just be exactly what you've been looking for all these years without even knowing it. Back in 1932, while the world was facing the Great Depression and only a few years before World War II broke out, a man named Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, made a series of predictions during deep trance states. Among hundreds of prophecies, many famous for their uncanny accuracy, there was one few people know about that's directly connected to what we're living through right now. Cayce talked about a specific period in human history, a time when a change in spiritual leadership wouldn't just be symbolic but would spark a silent, gradual awakening, especially among those who have already lived over 60 years. What makes this prophecy so extraordinary isn't just its precise timing, but the way it describes the inner effects of that transition, the subtle signs that most would miss while everyone's distracted by what's happening on the surface. Cayce wasn't just talking about the change of a public figure. He was talking about how that change would trigger something much more personal and transformative in the lives of millions. The election of a pope is never a simple event. Behind the rituals, protocols, white robes, and centuries-old traditions, there's a deep symbolism that goes beyond Catholicism itself. It's about replacing an archetypal figure, a symbol of the connection between the human and the divine, between the material and the spiritual. When that symbolism moves, something shifts inside all of us, even if we're not completely aware of it. Historians and analysts are busy discussing the new pontiff's theological positions, his likely administrative decisions, his background, and his political trends. The media is debating whether he'll be conservative or progressive, whether he'll stick to traditions or implement changes. But in the spaces away from the global spotlight, a much subtler and deeper phenomenon is taking place. A reorganization of the collective spiritual energy that, according to Cayce, has a special and direct impact on those who have crossed the 60-year mark. It's as if this event acts like a key, quietly turning in an invisible lock within the consciousness of an entire generation. An unspoken, yet deeply felt invitation for something dormant to awaken. And it's exactly this awakening that Cayce's forgotten prophecy warns us about and prepares us for. Interestingly, his warning isn't about disasters or collapses. It's about opportunities and renewal. A preparation not for the end, but for a new beginning. This isn't a message for everyone. If you're under 60, you might only feel the effects of this change indirectly, like ripples on a lake. But if you're past that milestone, what's happening right now might explain those inexplicable feelings that have been stirring inside you. That sudden restlessness, that sense that something important is about to happen, that inner call that doesn't come in clear words but insists on being heard. Many people over 60 have been reporting a strange feeling over the past few months. An indescribable discomfort, a restlessness that doesn't go away with external changes. Some visit doctors thinking it's a physical issue. Others blame anxiety on worrisome news and global instability. Some try to ignore it by staying busy with tasks and distractions. But according to Cayce's prophecy, what you might be experiencing isn't a problem to be fixed. It's an awakening that needs to be acknowledged. The real challenge isn't in the external world, even though all the signs point that way. The silent revolution accompanying the papal change is, above all, an internal revolution. It's an invitation to reconsider your values, your priorities, and most importantly, your understanding of your own purpose at this stage of life. Cayce described this moment as an activation of dormant wisdom, a time when those who have gathered decades of experience are called to reinterpret that baggage, transforming it into something that goes beyond personal memory to become a collective beacon. The deepest suffering in maturity rarely comes from physical limitations or material losses, no matter how painful they may be. True suffering arises when we lose our sense of purpose, when we can't see value in the path we've traveled, and mostly when we can't glimpse a purpose in the road ahead. And it's exactly at this point that Cayce's prophecy becomes most relevant. It speaks of a moment of reconnection to the deepest meaning of existence, especially for those who have lived long enough to see beyond the illusions of youth. Have you noticed how, in recent months, old memories have been coming back with surprising clarity? How reflections on choices made decades ago seem to ask for a new interpretation. This isn't a coincidence or mere nostalgia. It's part of the inner reorganization process that accompanies this global transition symbolized by the papal change. It's like the puzzle of your life is being reassembled, only this time with a much deeper understanding of what each piece really means. Cayce's prophecy presents a fundamental dilemma for everyone experiencing this awakening. You can resist by clinging to old thought patterns, outdated emotional habits, and limiting ideas about what it means to grow older. Or you can surrender to the transformative flow, allowing a new understanding to bloom within you. The first path deepens that sense of emptiness and meaninglessness. The second opens doors to one of the most significant and liberating experiences a human being can have. Challenging the common view that aging is a decline, Cayce described this stage not as a downward slide but as the moment of highest potential for true wisdom. Not the kind of wisdom found in books or theories, but the kind that comes from the conscious integration of experience and purpose. According to him, the world is entering a period of turbulence and transformation where this kind of wisdom won't just be valuable. It'll be essential for the survival of civilization itself. Just think for a moment. What if everything you've lived through, every joy and every pain, every victory and every defeat, every love and every loss, was actually preparing you for this very moment? What if the 60-plus years you carry aren't a burden that distances you from relevance, but exactly what qualifies you for a unique mission only someone with your experience can fulfill? That's the essence of the message Cayce conveyed and what the papal transition reminds us of. We're at a crossroads. On one side is the path of forgetting yourself, disconnecting from your own value, and giving in to the limiting idea that life after 60 is just an unimportant epilogue. On the other side is the path of conscious awakening, of recognizing your own transformative potential, of accepting the call to be not just a witness, but a key player in a fundamental change in our collective consciousness. The choice, as always, is personal, but the implications of that choice have never been as deep and widespread. There's a reason traditional societies always reserved a place of honor for their elders. It wasn't just out of respect or empty tradition. It was the intuitive recognition that there's a quality of presence, a kind of wisdom that can only emerge after decades of living deliberately. Our modern society, obsessed with youth and novelty, has systematically devalued this wisdom, creating one of human history's biggest distortions: the idea that aging equals obsolescence. Cayce's prophecy speaks of a time when that distortion will be reversed, a period in which those over 60 will be called upon not to stand out because of power or external influence, but to take on a much subtler, deeper role, being anchors of stability in chaotic times, bearers of a perspective that goes beyond the cycles of panic and euphoria that define our era. And the most fascinating part is that this influence won't come mainly through grand words or big actions, but through the quality of presence, the calm amid the storm. Have you ever noticed how certain older people naturally calm a room just by being there? How their silence can speak louder than many speeches? How their way of observing life seems to carry a depth that defies logical explanation? That's what Cayce described as silent wisdom, a state of being that doesn't need to shout to be felt and recognized. And it's exactly this quality that the world needs most in these historically turbulent times. What few realize is that this wisdom doesn't just come automatically with age. It has to be nurtured through a conscious process of integrating experiences, making peace with the past, and recognizing the value of the journey you've been on. And it's exactly that process that is now being catalyzed, symbolically marked by the transition in global spiritual leadership that the papal election represents. Everything we do echoes in eternity, wrote Marcus Aurelius almost 2,000 years ago. And that deep truth has never been more relevant than it is now. Every choice you've made, every relationship you've built, every hardship you've overcome, every mistake you learned from, none of it was wasted. It all forms the fabric of your unique wisdom, a wisdom the world desperately needs, even if it doesn't know how to ask for it in conventional ways. Amidst the deafening noise of instant information, heated opinions, extreme polarizations, and shallow certainties, there's a growing hunger for something different, for depth, for perspective, for balance. And that's exactly what the generation over 60 is being called to offer, not as a service or duty but as a natural expression of who you are, the organic result of a life lived with deliberate integration. Cayce talked about the importance of silence during this awakening process. Not the silence of apathy or resignation, but the fertile silence of conscious contemplation. He suggested that during times of great transformation, the most important signals don't come in the form of grand revelations, but in whispers that can only be heard when the mind is quiet and receptive. Try spending a few moments each day just sitting in silence, without expectations, without actively seeking answers. Simply allowing your mind to rest. Notice how thoughts and emotions come and go without you fully attaching to them. Over time, you might begin to sense a different kind of clarity, a form of understanding that doesn't depend on logical analysis or reasoned conclusions, but comes straight from your deepest experiences. Another practice Cayce specifically recommended for this transition period is reflective writing, not as an intellectual exercise, but as a dialogue with your inner wisdom. Write without censoring yourself, without worrying about style or coherence, allowing memories, insights, and reflections to flow naturally. With time, you might start noticing patterns emerging, connections between seemingly unrelated events in your life, and a deeper sense of meaning to experiences that once seemed random or purposeless. Nature also plays a fundamental role in this process of awakening and reconnection. Cayce spoke about how consciously connecting with nature's rhythms, the sunrise and sunset, the changing seasons, the growth of plants, the flow of water, can help reestablish a sense of continuity and belonging that goes beyond the everyday worries of life. Even if it's just a few minutes watching the sky, feeling the wind, or touching the earth with mindful attention, this reconnection with nature opens channels to an older, more comprehensive wisdom. The key is to understand that the awakening talked about in the prophecy isn't something that just happens to you. It's a process in which you actively participate by paying attention, engaging in deep reflection, and opening your heart. It's an invitation to be fully present in your own life, to recognize the unique value of your journey, and to let the wisdom accumulated over decades express itself in this extraordinary moment we're living. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Cayce's prophecy is its view on our relationship with time and the inevitable losses it brings. In our culture, aging has almost become synonymous with loss, losing youth, beauty, health, relevance, purpose. This narrative of constant loss is one of the deepest sources of suffering, especially after 60. But what if that perspective is fundamentally wrong? What if what we see as losses are really invitations to a more authentic and profound way of being? True acceptance in psychology isn't about passive resignation or complacency. It's about understanding, in a mature way, that resisting the natural flow of life only multiplies our suffering, whereas embracing that flow releases an extraordinary energy that was previously wasted in unnecessary internal battles. Acceptance isn't about giving up. It's about making room for something new and truer to emerge. When you fully accept where you are in your journey, acknowledging every mark time has made, every dream fulfilled or unfulfilled, every joy and sorrow that makes up your unique story, something amazing happens. You discover a freedom you might have never experienced before. The freedom to be exactly who you are, without excuses, without masks, without the constant need to prove your worth or justify your existence. This is one of the great paradoxes that Cayce described in his prophecies. Only when we truly accept where we are can we start moving beyond it. Only when we embrace our history with all its imperfections can we begin to write the next chapters of our lives with genuine authenticity and renewed purpose. Only when we let go of the fight against aging do we uncover the extraordinary gift that this stage of life offers. Think of the oldest trees in a forest. They don't fight to look young. They don't despair over the signs of time on their trunks, and they don't anxiously compare themselves to younger trees. Instead, they keep growing, perhaps more slowly, but much deeper, stretching their roots, offering shelter, stabilizing the ground around them, and fulfilling their unique role in the ecosystem. It's precisely because they fully accept their stage that they become the most majestic, the most resilient, and the most essential part of the forest community. Another crucial aspect of Cayce's message for this specific moment is about demystifying aging. For centuries, we've built a negative mythology around this stage of life, associating it mainly with decline, irrelevance, and passive waiting. This mythology has been so effective that many internalize these limiting beliefs, living by them long before any real limitations set in. The truth now emerging, symbolically catalyzed by the shift in global spiritual leadership, is that the years beyond 60 can actually represent the peak of human capacity in many essential areas. Contextual understanding, long-term vision, the ability to integrate seemingly contradictory perspectives, emotional wisdom, and discernment about what truly matters. We're not talking about palliative solutions to make up for losses, but real capabilities that can only fully bloom after decades of lived and integrated experience. What might change in your life if you started seeing this stage not as a melancholy epilogue, but as one of the most significant and transformative chapters of your journey? What could be possible if you recognized that you're exactly where you need to be, with all the experiences you've amassed, to fulfill a purpose only someone with your unique history can achieve? Cayce described purpose not as large heroic missions or extraordinary achievements, but as the small, everyday choices that reflect our deepest truth. It's the genuine smile for a stranger who seems to be hurting. It's the wise word offered gently to someone seeking guidance. It's the quality of your attention in the simplest of interactions, the ability to truly listen, to really see the other person, to offer the gift of your mindful presence in a world that's chronically distracted. These small actions filled with conscious presence and loving intention create waves of transformation far beyond what we can imagine. Like a stone dropped in a pond, every moment lived with full awareness creates ripples that continue to spread long after the moment has passed, touching lives in ways we may never fully know. If this content has stirred something in you, if these words have resonated with that inexplicable restlessness you've been feeling, don't let this moment pass without taking action. Subscribe to this channel, share this video with someone who might benefit from the message, and most importantly, take some time today to sit quietly and let these reflections find their own way inside you. Cayce's prophecy was never about external events happening to us. It's always been about how we choose to respond to the invitations life gives us. The papal election we witnessed is symbolically one of those invitations, a call to awaken to a deeper understanding of who you are and what you came to do on this planet, especially at such a critical moment in human history. It's never too late to answer that call. In fact, if you're over 60, this might be exactly the moment your entire life was preparing you for. The moment when your voice, not necessarily loud, but clear and rooted in lived experience, is needed more than ever. The moment when your presence, not always active, but conscious and compassionate, might be exactly what someone around you needs to find. The world doesn't need more noise, more opinions, more chaos. It needs that unique quality of wisdom that can only come from a life lived with conscious integration, with courage, and with generosity. And that, precisely, is what you have to offer right now. The little white smoke rising from the Sistine Chapel doesn't just mark the selection of a new religious leader. For those with eyes to see and hearts to feel, it signals the start of a new chapter in your own journey. A chapter that you are invited to help write, with the ink of wisdom that only decades can produce and the blank page of possibilities that comes with each new day. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. Ultimately, the true prophecy isn't about what's going to happen to you. It's about what will happen through you when you fully embrace the call to awaken. And that awakening, as it always has been, starts with one simple choice. Choosing to be fully present in your life, exactly as it is right now, recognizing the priceless value of the journey that brought you here and the unique contribution that only you can offer to the world that is unfolding before our eyes.